What's up, guys? You are listening to HVAC Masters of the Hustle podcast. And this is your host, J Dub Moneymaker, and welcome to episode 96. First off, for all my listeners out there, make sure you guys smash the subscribe button. This podcast is helping thousands and thousands and thousands of people get to the next level. And I say this every episode. I believe that everyone has a Spartan in them. It's my job, my duty, and my obligation to bring that out in you. And let's go ahead and welcome our guests into the hot seat. A lot of my listeners, you asked me to get this beast of our industry into the hot seat. So let's welcome Lawrence Castillo. How you doing, brother?
Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So like I said, a lot of my listeners have reached out to me and said, man, you got to get them on the podcast. So, I reached out to you, and I'm very thankful for you to be in the hot seat right now. For some of my listeners that maybe don't know who you are, can you kind of tell them a little bit how you got into the HVAC industry and, a little bit about your background story? Because I know that in the West Coast, you have a huge name.
For me, I was somebody who spent no time in HVAC, and there was a friend of mine. Our kids went to school together, and he had a little residential company in Simi Valley, and he was struggling, and we had talked about it, and he had asked if I would be his general manager. So I walked into his shop day one as a GM with no experience in the business. Walked in there with, there's 10, 15 employees, and they all knew more than I did. The CSRs knew more than I did. The warehouse guy knew more than I did. And so I sat down and took a look at some of the books on the shelf. I figured this is a good starting point, and I pulled a bunch of books off the shelf. And all of these books said Clockwork Home Services Airtime 500 on the cover. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it didn't mean much to me. Didn't know what this was. Let me just start to flip the pages. And, now 20 plus years later, I realized the gold that I was reading and the blueprint for success that it was. But at the time, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But I poured over that stuff, and was able to, in a few years, we turned that company around and sold it to a national entity. And my next stop was to work for Mr. Abrams and to run the 1 hour here in Los Angeles. And, from there, I was able to manage some of the larger companies on the West Coast, companies with, a couple hundred trucks and operations that were really just on a different level. And so I've been really fortunate. I've had lots of great mentors, lots of great people that I've met along the way. And so thankful for the original opportunity from Frank Nascimento in Simi Valley. And it got me on a path that I never would have ever guessed that I'd end up on.
Nice. And currently you're the president of Brody Pennell Heating and Cooling in Los Angeles, correct?
That's correct. We are a 75-year-old heating and air conditioning company, the second oldest in Los Angeles. And that service base is deep, my friend. It is full of lots of folks that have stayed with the company because, outstanding customer service, and it's a great shop. And we serve, most of the west side of Los Angeles, and so happy to be there, and it's a great place to be.
Absolutely. And then also, you've got the opportunity to be part of the growth of some big companies in the Los Angeles or the Southern California area as well, talking about, Service Champions, talking about, ASI, talking about Service Champions. How were you there, or how long were you there, and what did you get from that company?
I was there a few different times in different incarnations. And I can say definitively that the years that I spent there were critical to the success that I've had in the industry. I started there when it was a smaller company, right? It's
Hmm.
it's just such a behemoth today, and but I met Leland so many years ago, and I remember the night that I met him. It was an awards ceremony, and we were the last two people there, and sitting there sipping a drink, and we walked to the car together, and um, I think about that all these years later, and that night was probably really important because I ended up, you know, becoming the general manager there, and just so much to be learned by an organization that's so well run. Leland is such a giant in our industry, and
Absolutely.
I'm lucky to count him as a friend. And he's somebody that I value the trust that he placed in me, and the experience that I had there was truly formative. I saw things there that I just didn't realize were going to be ever be possible in heating and air conditioning. And now in my career, you walk into a shop, like where I'm at now, and the folks inside of these shops, they've had no exposure to that type of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So, through no fault of their own, just it's always been the way it's been. So when you bring something, process and procedure that is proven, and you've seen it at such a high level of success, it's fun to implement that stuff and to give people a taste of what it's like on the big stage.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I was going to talk about is Service Champions is so good at implementing processes and procedures and training and everything like that. As a GM, how often would you say companies should meet and do trainings with their employees? How crucial is that?
Training was every day at Service
Yeah.
Champions. When you have such a large staff of technicians, you have to break it up, and you have a different group every day. And one of the days there's an all team meeting, but when you're that big, you have your new technicians that you're training over in this corner, and they're off on their own, and then you've got uh, your all the other groups of technicians, and it's constant training, right?
Yeah.
that's that's how we're able to build the business and um, develop them.
Yeah. Lauren, let me ask you a question. What has allowed you to be so successful as a manager?
um, I, I think that's great question. For me, I've liked to walk into a place and sort of take a look at, observe the way it is before seeing it on the P&L, try to find the deficiencies, and the opportunities for success.
Mhm.
And once you find those, just having a nice plan to key in on them. Every shop is different, right? And it's a matter of supporting your people, and that's an important one. There are so many technicians, salespeople, operations personnel who they're just craving support, right? And
Mhm.
in so many instances, they show up every day to their job, and they just do their job, and there isn't anyone to provide that kind of support. So I think if you're the kind of manager that can provide that, it goes a long way. It builds loyalty, and it keeps people coming back to work with a smile on their face.
Absolutely. And talking a little bit about Leland kind of being a influencer on you in this industry, who else has put a influence on you?
Uh, Mr. Abrams,
Mr. Gene
you know,
Abrams?
that was, yeah, I'm opening those books, and I remember the first time he walked into my office. He took off his watch and put it on my desk, and I thought this was going to be the whole Glenn Ross thing, right? You see this watch? This watch costs more than your car, but it wasn't. He said, "Do you see this watch?" And I'm looking up at him, and I'm saying yes. And you know, and it's true that that watch did cost more than my car, but he said the reason that I named my business Clockwork Home Services, take a look inside that watch, the craftsmanship, what has to happen with the mainspring and the gears and the pins and everything, all the to watch the mechanics was amazing. And he said, this is just like our business. Everything is interconnected. And if one of those pieces fails, it fails the entire operation, right?
Mm-hmm.
A great lesson. And he was full of those kinds of lessons. So I was fortunate to have the opportunity to, to spend time with him. Um, I think that in my first HVAC opportunity, I was a fresh set of eyes, and I wanted to help the guys get better. So not not ever knowing how to train comfort advisors and selling technicians, I went ahead and I brought Charlie Greer out
Mm-hmm.
to my shop, had him spend a week. He did ride-alongs. I watched him, and then I had Carl DeBenny come out to my shop, and he spent 3 or 4 days. And I think that that really played a huge part in the direction that I took personally going forward, because these were guys that's what they were just doing. That it was sales training. That was their niche. And I think I realized that um, I could do that pretty well at a high level too. So I borrowed, a little bit from each of them, and going forward, I realized that that was going to be a key to the success in any business that I managed, was the sales training part. So
Mm-hmm.
thanks to Charlie Greer, thanks to Carl DeBenny. But yeah, that was important stuff. So lots of people during my career that I bumped into, and and every day you're reminded of those relationships, and sometimes I'll spit something out of my mouth that might have come from one of those folks. It doesn't matter if it's Mr. Abrams or Leland or whoever, and we all borrow from each other. It's the
Absolutely.
relationships that make us successful.
Absolutely. And one thing that you said was, going through their P&Ls and everything like that, and really dissecting the business. But one thing that you also did before we get into that is, a lot of these companies that you were GM for, you were also basically the sales manager, right? So you were in the trenches with the guys. You were training the comfort advisor. So you really wore two hats.
It That's exactly the way that it worked for me. When you start off with small companies, you're running the company and you're running leads at the same time, right? So
Mhm.
I'd get to the shop, I'd do what I had to do. You get the guys out the door, I'd run a lead or two, and I'd come back, and um, those are fond memories. And but even with the larger companies, I did all the sales training. I didn't have a sales manager anywhere that I went,
Mhm.
and it's because it's what I enjoyed. I'm a guy that in a previous lifetime I was a stockbroker, and this was before we had computers on the desk. And so I would sit at my desk between 5:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., and I would make outbound phone calls from people that were dot matrix on little note cards, and I would call these people. And when you're doing that, you have like 20 seconds to be compelling and to engage them, and because you're just trying to buy another 20 seconds from them, right?
Mhm.
You want to talk to them about mutual funds or stocks. And this was a long time ago, my friend. And but I think that I really learned sales at that time, right? You're sitting there and you're all alone. I'm in an office at night, and I'm hitting people when they're home.
Mhm.
And so I knew if I could hook them in 20 seconds or 30 seconds, um, and I look back at this many years later, and that's how I learned to sell. And I think I taught it the same way to all my salespeople, right? It's just you're creating urgency. I
Mhm.
was creating urgency in 20
Oh,
seconds, and
absolutely.
that's what we're asking them to do in the house. So yeah, I did all my own sales training, and that was the most enjoyable part of my day. I had great teams. I had some amazing sales teams. And I remember and hopefully some of those pupils are listening in today. and remember the great times that we shared. But um, I really tried to be a great support system for my salespeople.
Yeah. So,
When they were,
did you train Jim Dotson as well?
I managed Jim Dotson.
Okay.
Um, I mean, Jim is the consummate
He's a
professional,
beast.
and Jim is, um, I think about all the great salespeople that worked for me during my career, and Jim is, at the very top of that list. He's a giant, and Jim. I didn't have to be on the phone helping Jim to close deals, right? I did that for many years with many other people, but
Okay.
Jim has a process that is proven, and the numbers that Jim puts up are gigantic,
Yeah.
and he's just so great at what he does, and always enjoyed working with Jim. Just a great guy, and a great example for what the top of the industry should look like.
Absolutely. And talking about getting in the P&Ls and everything like that, how have you grown the revenue of these businesses? You said that you like to look at all that before actually going in, but what do you think allowed you to really grow these beast companies?
I think that systems are really important. I always started in the call center and dispatch, and it's amazing how many companies aren't executing. Um, and it all starts there, right? I mean, if you're not booking the calls right, if you're not dispatching the calls right, it ends right there. Those business owners
Absolutely.
and managers who are out there right now wondering why their numbers aren't where they need to be, you've got to go back to that. Um, that's really where it always started for me. Um, and then further beyond that, once you get that part down, then it's having the written processes and systems and procedures in place, because once you have that, then you have accountability, right?
Mhm.
And we talked about service champions earlier, but everything that we did in that building was written down, and uh, everybody knew that there were going to be consequences, and everyone knew that there were numbers that they were responsible for hitting, and
Mhm.
that's the way to run a business, right? Because if you're not hitting your numbers, we either need to train you, and give you the opportunity to show why you're not hitting the numbers. And if eventually you can't hit those numbers, then there has to be another plan, right? So
Absolutely. And Lawrence, I got to ask you a question because I'm a big believer, and I know Service Champions does this. I'm sure you do this at your company now, as well as Bell Brothers, where I was from. But how important is it to have your sales numbers in front of these guys every single day? Because I travel nationwide, and sometimes I talk to these comfort advisors, and they don't know what their numbers are, right? I mean, the important keys of putting these numbers out in the open, right? Being transparent.
it's critical. And as managers, we have to make it happen, right? They can't do it for themselves. These comfort advisors will get in their truck every day, and we ask them to track it. And some of them are great about tracking it, right? Some of them have their little notepad or their notebook, and they say, "Hey, I ran 3 calls today. I closed 2. The third one I'm following up tomorrow." Uh, Some of them are good about that, but
Mhm.
they're not measuring many of the metrics that in the office we should be measuring, right? As managers, it's not just about revenue per lead and your close rate, and it's about how much time uh, people are spending on calls. It's about there are just these numbers need to be in front of everybody every day. So if you're a sales manager or a general manager out there who doesn't have a method to share the numbers with your people daily, then you need to change that, right? And with there's a lot of folks that are on Service Titan. I use it every day, and you can design reports that are. I get 7 scoreboards at 6 in the morning every day that give me everything that I need. You just need to talk to somebody who knows how to build the reports.
Absolutely.
Um, but it's such a great tool, and for the accountability purposes, everybody needs to know they're standing every day. I'm a big believer in that.
So I got to ask you, Lawrence, you're a believer of, or I should ask, let's see, how should a sales department be managed?
One day at a time.
One day at a
Um,
time. You're dealing with a lot of emotions.
day at a time. You're dealing with a lot of different people, right? Um, when you're managing, and for some of these bigger companies where you got 20 people quoting every day, um, that's a lot to balance, right? That's a lot to balance. And if the smaller company where you got 3 or 4 or 5 people running calls, um, I think that we need to remember that as far as the training part, the curriculum is everything. As a good sales manager, you need to be able to put fresh and engaging content in front of your people that they can utilize every day, right? It's Sales meetings are not supposed to be BS sessions,
No.
right? And that happens. You put 10, 15, 20 people into a room and you're not going to get much done. So then you've got to break it up, right? You have smaller meetings. You do whatever you have to do, but don't let that kind of a situation hinder your ability to help people grow. Have to be smarter than that. Um, and then as a sales manager, to remember that there's nothing new out there, right? We can't reinvent what's already been invented. You know,
Mhm.
I think about the stuff like I said in the old airtime books, and look at the comfort questionnaire, right? The old comfort questionnaire, and you're sitting down in your lead and you're asking the same questions that they were asking 20 years ago. Is there any reason why we won't be able to do business tonight? Right?
Yeah.
That's 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 John Young and Jim Abrams 25,
Yep.
30 years
Hey,
ago.
if I'm fortunate enough to design the safest and most economical system guaranteed to meet your needs, is there any reason why I can't ask for business?
That
But here's
is,
the thing
and
about
and
that.
and the really
The questionnaire is designed to pull that objection out right there, right? But a
that's
lot of
exactly
comfort
right.
advisors, when they ask that question, they're scared because they don't want to hear the objection. But then when they do hear the objection, they hold on to the objection, right? At that point in that presentation, you just take it as a grain of salt because they're telling you now what hallway, Weldon Long, what hallway we need to walk through to close these doors to make sure that we're at the end and we're asking for the business. We have all the doors closed.
Exactly. They're exposing themselves to you, and
Mhm.
that's what it's designed for, right? And so as a sales manager, you need to remember that these these things that we're talking about, it works today, it worked 10 years ago, it worked 20 years ago. And if your guys are struggling with conversion, if they're struggling, have them sit down and talk a little bit about just those basics, because the people that really execute on a high level, that stuff is all a part of their game, right? It's
Mhm.
There's a reason that the guys that are at the top of the industry, they they had exposure to that stuff years ago, and it's still in their tool bag.
Absolutely. And Lawrence, what do you think makes a successful HVAC company? What do you have to have lined up?
A growth plan. Um, there are so many companies that just don't have a growth plan, and as a result, the bottom 10% they're always going to be there, right? They're never going to be shown the door. You're not going to have fresh talent coming in. And, if you're a big enough company to have your own, training school, that's easy, right? Quarterly how many technicians you're going to add. But if you're a smaller company and you don't have that luxury, you have to have a written growth plan. And it's just like a marketing plan, right? With marketing, that you're going to spend this amount this month, right? This percentage of sales. It's the same thing with recruiting. You have to have a plan. It can't just be, I'm going to put up an ad on Indeed because this technician left last week. That's not a growth plan,
No.
right? That's People who don't have a growth plan. They're going to find themselves in a hot mess. And especially now, look at this with the virus.
Mhm.
You're finding that your staff is dwindling at times, and you don't have all your field personnel. So it's a good reminder for people to get a written growth plan.
Oh, absolutely. We have to, I always talk about putting our goals in front of us, right? Just like we are talking about numbers, keeping them in front of you daily. When we write goals, we're in January of 2021, right? So everyone listening to the podcast, ask yourself right now as you're driving and listening, have you written your goals for 2021? Have you broken them down annually, monthly, weekly, daily, right? You have to put this stuff in front of you. It's very, very important.
And it's January, right? There's no, how everybody says, I'm going to start losing weight in January, right? Well, it's January. So it's time
We're
to
here.
take a look at your business. Exactly. And see what you need to do to get to the next step and the next level, because a lot of business owners just show up every day. And guess what? Just showing up every day isn't going to grow your business.
Absolutely. And talking about your company a little bit now, how long have you been the president?
Newly, this is a new opportunity, and
Nice.
this just sort of fell out of the sky. And I'm fortunate for the opportunity, and it's this is a very well known company in Los Angeles, and it's been around a very long time. So I'm happy to be there and to be managing a great group of people, and I have really high hopes for what we can accomplish together.
Awesome. And what are your goals for your team for 2021?
Um, I'm still learning uh, the people and taking a look at the numbers and doing the deep dive.
Uh-huh.
But I can tell you this: we are not executing as we should. Um, and so, this takes me back in my career to be in a shop where, it's not 200 people. This is something that's much more easily manageable. And I already see the deficiencies. I already know what has to be done. Uh, but I need to get a lot of long time employees to understand some change. And
Absolutely.
that's going to be a challenge, right? When you have people that have been at a place for 20 plus years, um, they've done it the same way for so long, and like I said, they haven't had exposure to some of the amazing stuff that's out there. So that's the challenge. We will grow this year, and I'm excited about it. So I'm in the midst of putting these plans together.
So I'm excited to ask you this question, Lawrence, because you're newer as a president in this company, but culture is huge in a company, right? And it sounds like this company that you just joined, right, has some employees that's been there for quite some time. And with that being said, you don't really want to disturb the culture, but you also want to fine tune things, right? So, Lawrence, how would you go about, or how are you going to go about fixing these things, but without disturbing the culture? And how important is it about having a good culture?
Great question. Culture is everything, and I've been fortunate enough uh, to visit a lot of my friends' shops over the years. Kenny and Jerry Bell, where you
Mhm.
worked. I mean, it's you want to walk into a place and you have to earn loyalty, right? The people, you want them to be excited about coming there every day. And so for me, the culture, it needs some work. Um, I just think about camaraderie.
Absolutely.
I'm at a shop where um, I think, what a really important thing that's really, some people think it's a small deal, but the shout outs.
Oh yeah.
I think it's important to celebrate when people sell service agreements, when people sell repairs, when they get 5-star reviews.
I'm
All
so
of this
happy
stuff
you
needs to
mentioned
be
this.
it needs to be broadcast, and everybody needs to share in that. And it gives everybody something to be excited about, and it builds the camaraderie. And it's not going on where I'm at right now. So I've given them the inkling that it's coming, but it's been a very big part of all of the places that I've ever been.
Absolutely. And, talking about culture real quick with me going into companies, right? Because I'm at a new company every week. And what I like to do is I feel like I bring in a good culture when I'm there, because I feel like some companies that I go to, the camaraderie might be a little bit down, right? But then by the end of the week, everyone's high-fiving each other, literally hugging each other, like pumped up, ready for the following week. And the things that I like to focus on is truly understanding who you're training, right? So I take these guys on lunch one on one and I talk to them. I like to understand how they were brought up, their mindset, what battles did they have to overcome in their life to get where they are today, right? And then also, like you said, I'm super stoked that you brought it up, but the shout outs, right? I go to these companies and I mean, I could show you my cell phone of these companies I go to. Every day I'm getting shout outs, but they weren't existing until I got there. Business owners, they didn't understand the importance for comfort advisors and technicians. If you sell a maintenance plan as a technician, or you sell a part repair or a turnover, or sell a system, right? Happily involve a company, and you see a tech stream and you see all your employees shouting out, great job, congratulations. Not only does it create a great culture, but it also creates competitiveness, because as a comfort advisor, I'm like, oh man, Jim Dotson just sold 25,000. I got to sell my next one, right? So you also get that competitiveness as well, because I'm an extremely competitive person. And me and Jim Dotson battled for many, many years.
Well, and I agree with all of that. It's such an important part of building camaraderie inside of a business. And way back in the day, when Dotson would sell, Jim didn't need the adulation, right? He's a self-contained unit, but it's everybody enjoys being recognized.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's something that every business owner and every manager out there should be hearing. Sometimes we forget about that. And if some of your office workers aren't being acknowledged on the shout outs, then find a different way to recognize them, because everybody deserves to be recognized. It makes a difference and it builds loyalty.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that 100%. I gotta ask you, where you keep progressing in this industry, right? So every time I've seen, I mean, looking at your numbers and everything like this, as of what companies you've been at, working at, you just keep growing, right? Now you're the president of a company. So where do you see yourself, or where do you see this company in the next 5 years? What
Great
is your
question.
vision?
Um, yeah, having been a part of these big shops and seeing it on such a big level, I think now, so many years later, I I can reduce the ramp up time, you know, by so much, just because I really know where to head inside the building to make a quick impact.
Mhm.
So I think that we can take this company and just increase its size and profitability, very, very quickly. Having been inside the doors, for a couple of weeks now, I see the opportunity and it's massive. This is just an unpolished gem.
Right.
So I'm really excited about it. It's uh, and that's all you want. You want to be excited about the opportunity in front of you. So this should really be a great time. And yeah, this is going to be a great year. A lot of people, as a manager, you want to give all of the people that work with you a path to success and to greater income. And that's
Mhm.
really our job, right? It's the profitability piece and the growth part, but it's the individuals that work in the business. And maybe some of them have been ignored or haven't had the recognition. So it's meeting with all of them, making sure that they understand that you are there to support them. You want them to have more. I stood in front of technicians this week and I asked them about what they want in the next few years. And it's a great question to ask, because you learn about people, right? Some of them want your job. Some of them want to be running a business. Some of them want to be a manager. Some of them want to, be a comfort advisor. So it's a great reminder. Just spend time with your employees. Spend time with them one on one. Find out, what their goals are.
Absolutely. And talking about real quick average tickets, right? So a lot of when I go to companies and I do training, some people have average tickets of selling systems for 8, 9,000, right? But the knowledge of indoor air quality and looking at the bigger scope of the envelope, duct work, insulation, remove seal and blow, there's so much more opportunity that we're missing, right? Because we're going in there with blinders. Lawrence, what is your experience of technicians going into a house with blinders? Why do you think they do that?
I think sometimes that they're afraid of the the big ask. Um, I always liked when I was running calls and even managing, salespeople. I think initially you want to get some type of commitment, right?
Mhm.
And then you can grow it. And you know, providing options is the whole key, right? And um, during my career, I bumped into a lot of people that have been trained by Joe Crisera, and there's a lot of stuff there that makes sense, right? To offer that number of options, and it's a lot of people find success with that. And I subscribe to offering a bunch of options, but I like to get a smaller commitment and then to grow it from there.
That's
When I used to
that's
run calls, I'd spend. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I do. I like that you said that because I find it a lot easier to present the four options, right? And then have them pick the option and then bring them back to your questionnaire because that's what I teach when I'm on site. Now you bring them back to the questionnaire because you've asked them permission to give solutions on hot or cold spots in the home, indoor air quality. Their son suffers from allergies that turn asthmatic, right? And you want to make them a superhero, right? So, hey, Bob and Betty, we picked your system. Now, talking about the indoor air quality for little Timmy, you know, would you like to add this, which will definitely alleviate those sinus issues or whatever the respiratory issues are? And it's going to only be another $12 on financing, right? I don't really talk about the full 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. It's just going to add another $12 to your finance. Is that important for your little son? And then you go from there and you just start adding on to your ticket from there.
That's a great way to do it, and that's why you're having the success, or you had the success that you did while you were in the field. It's controlling the call, Jason. Right? If
Mm-hmm.
if you have a great process and you know how you're going to navigate through all of that stuff, that's what separates the folks that are selling 1.5 million from the folks that are selling 3.5 and 4 and 5 million. Right?
Yep.
Is just having complete control and confidence and just running it. So that's
Absolutely.
it's a great process.
And Lawrence, let me ask you, I got listeners from business owners, dispatchers, comfort advisors, technicians, installers. What would you like for them to get out of this episode of HVAC Masters of the Hustle?
Um, I think there's so much that we talk about, but um, if it's an owner, I would say we preach to our technicians and our field personnel to go and to do something unexpected for your customer, to bring in the trash cans or bring in the newspaper or fix a broken gate. But I think as an owner, what we should probably do is go out tomorrow and do something unexpected for our employees. We have to realize that they're our number one customer, right? Is our employees. So show up tomorrow and do something unexpected for your employees. Buy all the ladies in your office flowers, right? Buy a bottle of hand sanitizer for everybody and put it on their desk. Do something for the people that work for you. And these are the small things that build loyalty. Um, for the salespeople, I would say that, and this is something that I was just going over the other day, but I'll share it. And this is I think a good nugget. But I really am a big believer in showing your discounts when you're selling. Um, when you go to the grocery store and you spend $180 and they give you the receipt back and the receipt says that you saved 27 bucks, I feel really good about my purchase. And I bring the groceries home and my wife inspects that receipt and she sees that we saved 27 bucks and she feels great about it, right? Um, it's when it says that you saved $2.48, you're going to be like, what? You know? And so I think people like to be made to feel that they've gotten an amazing deal. It's more than just going out and building value and presenting options. And it's more than that. I think that if you show the discounts and make people feel really good about that they got over on you, that they got an amazing deal and that you gave them significant discounts, I think that your post close becomes a little easier, right? They feel great about their purchase, and they feel great that you did you did something special for them. So
Absolutely.
those
I,
are a couple of nuggets for owners and for sales managers, right?
awesome, brother. Well, thank you for being a guest in the hot seat. I greatly appreciate it. Until next time.
Thank you, my friend. Love being here.